Inflation is just the start. All right, so we're reading an article from a guy named Cole Smead. I read him every now and again from advisor. He's writing, at least this article is on advisor perspectives. Look, I try to give the benefit. I do, believe it or not, I do try to read the other side on occasion. I want to see what I'm missing, and I'm just sitting there. I'm reading this guy. And I'm like, this is not conclusive at all that inflation is just a start. I try. I'm look. I'm able to be convinced. Show me something that convinces me though, and I don't see it. But anyway, let's go into this. I mean, it's interesting. Let's see. Cole Smead of Smead Asset Management or Smead Capital Management. All right. So I don't know. I'm familiar with his writing just through here, but I'm not familiar with him in terms of his prognosis of previous times or anything. I just don't know. All right. Let's see. But I want to go down to here. He talks about my economics classes at Whitman College, wherever the hell that is. We were taught that money supply times velocity is equal to price times output. What has transpired? What are you looking at, Big Bear? What has transpired in a large way since 2009 was an increase in the money supply, M. What has counteracted the increase in the money supply has been a decline in the velocity during much of the last 10 years. Let me go back to my own, what I posted here on my own channel just a second ago. Annual M2 growth. Now, this guy's using total money supply. We're using M2. It's all relative, but relative to the same scenario plays. You can see money supply growing like nuts in the last year. Why? Every time I do a video, he says, I want to be on the TV. Every single time. It's the cutest thing ever, this guy. All right. And you can see the money supply right there in 2009 fell off a cliff, and then it rose 10%. All right. So we got big time money supply increases. And then it went down, then it skyrocketed up. But either way, we still got 5% year-over-year money supply increases on the low end. And we got money supply increases right in here. It dropped like drastically in the late 1990s when we had actually budget balances, balanced budgets. But you can see the money supply growth has been consistently in the 10% range, at least a 7 to 10% range, and we haven't had hyperinflation because the velocity of money is declining. All right. Let's see. We argued to investors that the increase of money supply back then was like doubling the money in the monopoly game, but not paying anyone for pass and go or free parking. Think about today's terms. We must start by stating that the money supply is up 24% in the last year. Again, we go back here and right there, 24% in the last year. Okay, so we get that. If velocity stays equal to what it was prior, prices would be up by that amount. So basically, if velocity doesn't drop, it actually stays the same. The prices would go up by the amount of the money supply increase. That inherently makes sense. The question is, does velocity stay the same? The data argues that velocity has declined further during the last year. We still believe the monopoly analogy can teach us more. The Federal Reserve has increased the money in the monopoly bank. The federal government is handing out more than $200 for pass and go, and this is the critical thing, and paying hundreds of dollars for free parking via loans, grants, and stimulus checks. So his argument here is that the federal government is not only not giving you money for pass and go, they're giving you more than $200 for pass and go, i.e. the stimulus is what he's saying. Okay, and I don't deny that, not the least. It's our opinion that Adam Smith's invisible hand is beginning to understand this issue faster than economists. Investors and business owners have more incentive than academics or educational institutions. The economists may come back later and explain the whys. However, that won't help you with inflation. The worst part of inflation is that you don't know how bad it is until much later. I'm not so sure about that. Why is the game of monopoly speeding up? It's notable in raw material, as Greg Abel mentioned when he's interviewing Warren Buffett. Lumber, copper, steel, and cotton are all at 5-year highs. Warren Buffett commented on housing. Has a tight supply, thus is exhibiting price inelasticity. Well, for the short term, these people just bought the house right next to us, significantly higher than I would ever price it. But do they buy at the wrong time? Probably. If the inputs go up in price at our home builders, they are responding by raising the price of the house more than the cost, which makes sense. They're having a hard time finding lumber for a good price, but that's going to change once the supply picks up. All right, so we think housing is probably the most interesting look at the inflation question. So again, he's saying housing is showing the signs of inflation. Okay, supply chains corruption, supply chains bottlenecks. At the end of the day, that will it just all comes back to normal, man. Everything reverts back to the mean for the most part, and as such, the supply will catch up with the demand, and that's just the magic of the freaking markets. It's amazing how the markets work, unless they have some intervention from the non-invisible hand of the federal government. All right. Let's see. Millennials love houses in an act of God's. Let's see. It appears that we've done a tectonic shift in housing since the pandemic and the policy response began. Millennials love houses, and an act of God caused them to become the newest suburban immigrants. Baby boomers love houses and aren't moving out of them like prior generations. Therefore, the existing supply of homes for sale is at a record low. And as an example, all right, well, inherently supply is low, prices go up, demand increases. Supply goes down, demand goes up, prices go up. That's just a fact. If investors are arguing that as real interest rates increase, housing will get hurt. The data of the 1970s suggests it's the opposite exactly. So that we had significant increases in the inflationary value of the prices, even though interest rates are through the roof. As real high interest rates increased, housing was protected from inflationary pressures and left extra compensation for the risks of that era beyond the effects of inflation. In other words, inflation showed you higher levels of pricing pressures in other inflationary times, though affordability was declining rapidly. And as we look into the 80s, there was no increase hardly at all in price. It's all real estate or location, I get it. But what happened was, you think about it. All right, so people are buying. The demand is there. The supply is not there to meet the demand. The prices go up. And then what happens is people say, man, I can sell my house for a hell of a lot more money than I paid for it. Let me put that sucker on the market. Well, they still have to buy something. You see what I'm saying? And then the people say, well, we're also going to build new houses, which was completely shut down for the most part because of lumber and all that. So the lumber comes in and it's amazing. The markets are amazingly efficient. That's why the government and socialism can never work. The markets are so efficient. We believe the cost of replacing an existing home is going up faster than the appraisal reports can keep up with it. The cost of replacement only rises when inputs go up and finished homes are delayed by a lack of skilled labor. Interesting. All right, so I want to go down to it. This is, he talks about right here. Hold on a second, let me find what I was saying. First time since World War II, the government is the strongest competitor for low-price workers. We are hearing from companies that we interact with that it's hard to source workers. Dishwashers are an example at restaurants. Bloomberg has been reporting that prices are going up and incentives are being offered to get people to wash dishes. The reason is that the government is competing with those workers for stimulus checks. You can get it paid for doing nothing. Why go in? This is much like Warren Buffett said on UAW contract. If the housing cost, the cost of a car, and the cost going to a restaurant are going up, it's only a matter of time before workers make demand that they want their business to get back to full capacity to pay for higher costs of labor. Yes, that is true. But here's the problem. We have this the non-invisible hand of the government handing out stimulus checks, and those stimulus checks are going kaboom. They're going like the dinosaur. They will be non-existent in a few short months, and as such, the demand, this fake demand for labor, is going to go away. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, those dishwashers say, "Whoa, I better get back and get my job." And what happens to the price of the demand then? Oh my goodness. The price for those laborers then is going to go down because there's no freaking fake floor. This whole thing with the minimum wage, why the minimum wage is so evil. All right. It's never been this bad in supply chain since 1987. You might want to buy a product that a company might want to produce it for you, but it'll take them more time than in the past. The same goods produced in a longer fashion create scarcity. Who's been arguing for scarcity? Scarcities create pricing pressures. Supply chains are all screwed up for all kinds of people, but mostly it's a buying frenzy. Well, it's a buying frenzy, yes, but there's supply chains. And you have a supply corruption, and you got an increase in demand because of fake stimulus checks, inherently that's short-term inflationary. We will end this piece with a tip of the... All right, whatever. So that's it. He's basically... Hold on a second. talks about some idiotic thing by Larry Summers. Larry Summers are saying he used to be the president of Harvard. I think he was Obama's finance secretary. He's just a clown. Anyway, these are the least responsible fiscal macroeconomic policy we've had for at least 40 years. It's fundamentally driven by intransigence on the Democratic left and intransigence and the completely irresponsible behavior in the whole of the Republican Party. Right. So Larry Summers is a clown. But at the end of the day, this is it. And I'm sitting there, I just asked my wife, so think about it. What happens when people say, I can't find a dishwasher, I need my dishes washed? I'm going to automate that. I mean, what happens when people say, I can't find people to pick my strawberries? Remember, I used to pick strawberries from Maxwell's Farms in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, when I was a kid. I think I got 25 cents a quart. And they'd import these Cambodians, and those suckers would freaking fly. It was amazing watching these guys work, man. I was like, damn. And I'm sitting there taking my sweet time. I had a jukebox, one of those boom boxes playing Metallica. And I just sit there and eat one, pick two, eat one, pick two. And it was Cambodians would freaking lap me. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was, talk about white privilege. No such thing as white privilege, as American privilege, man. I'll never forget those guys. And they freaking busted their butt. And every day, you'd bring your number of quarts that you had, or whatever it was, pints, and they'd pay you 25 cents. They'd just give you dollars. Freaking, it was awesome. You walk out with cash money. It was fantastic. And at the end of the day, they're already getting AI machines to be able to do all that, to be able to zap weeds. Now, whether or not that's exactly coming down the pike anytime, I don't know. But they're working on it. That's not inflationary. It's just not. Now, what if they can't get? I don't know. What I'm just saying is, at the end of the day, you can't. I mean, we've been importing cheap labor for many moons. That's all there is to it. At some point, you can say, well, that's going to decline. Okay, then the price goes up. What do I grant you? And that would be a inflationary tendency for sure. Where I'm saying, though, is right now you have inflationary on the worker side. And again, workers are the biggest source of freaking cost of businesses. The price of labor is the biggest cost of businesses. And if some of that labor is outsourced to machinery, that's just, I mean, it doesn't take much to be non-inflationary. I don't understand why people can't get this. You run any P&L and look at any profit and loss statement and see the biggest cost to your bottom line. So you got your top line as revenue, you got your bottom line as net profits. What is the biggest cost? Ask any businesses. It's always labor. Always labor. So businesses are always looking to minimize cost of labor. And as such, they're looking for ways to automate stuff, man. I sit there, and it's amazing to me how people don't get that. And as such, the costs go down, which means the price of the goods they sell go down. And yes, you're right now, you're seeing a low skilled labor in the luxury of having a government paying them money not to work. Well, all that is doing is ramping up the desire to learn AI, machinery, 3D printing, and all this, so you don't have to rely on low skilled labor to begin with. You can do it in machines. Anyway, this is it. This is it. This is the only inflationary thing I got. I was like, man, this is nothing. It's nothing. I'm sitting there thinking, what else could have been? I'm racking my brain to think, where could the inflation come? And it's not low interest rates, because we've had low interest rates for so long. I mean, we've had so many low interest rates, cash out refis. That ship has sailed. I mean, yes, that has happened, but that hasn't done anything. We have the only thing that we could have that jumps out at me, the government printing. I get that. I mean, that is definitely inflationary. As an economist, and I'm not an economist, but I studied it, and obviously I enjoy it. Yes, I get the idea of that, and I 100% agree. If the government is printing money and there's more money in the economy, that is inherently inflationary. But if it's being offset with increases in productivity on labor, it's just not. It's not inflationary. Just because the government's printing doesn't mean it's inflationary if it's being offset by increases in productivity, which it is. So I'm thinking the only other thing could be it's just regulation. It's always regulation. Big government coming in and competing on the low skill side of labor regulation, more OSHA requirements, more minimum wage and all that. But even that, man, you're like, okay, well, then businesses have even more incentive to create alternatives to hiring people. It is always an employment issue, always and everywhere. It's just, if you can't find, if you have increased productivity, you're not having inflation, regardless of government spending. Now, socialism will lead to inflation because of creating scarcity. But again, it's not anything to do with the printing press. It's always to do with the government regulation. I'm racking my brain. I can't figure it out. Where would the inflation come? And what I'm saying is, I'm not, people say, oh, well, how about this? Look, I get, there's always short-term hiccups, man. I can't figure out. And I'm wanting to. I'm wanting to see where this hyperinflation comes. Food shortages, yeah, well, I get that. Food shortages is somewhat of an easy way. I was listening to some lady today, or maybe she posted on my own channel. She went to Lowe's and got like, I don't know, 5 tomato plants, some other plants and some soil for like $100. And I said, well, you can buy seeds. Hell, I got a freaking boatload of seeds. I got from True Leaf Market there. I got tons of seeds for like $85. I mean, it's more seeds than I could possibly know what to do with. In fact, I still got to check this out. Let's see if I still have it. Yeah, I got my little bag. Look at this, a bag of kale seeds, my friends. I got that last year, and these germinate, and I got it from the local feed store. Probably cost me $5. I've already used half of them. I mean, hell, I probably used 3/4 of them already because I like microgreens, and I got kale plants freaking amuck here. It's great. I love, not kale when it's like fully grown, but man, when it's like, oh, it's good. All right, so you grow your own kale. You just get your seeds, and this is a year old. They're still germinating, probably 90%. I don't know. All right, love your thoughts. All right, we'll see you.